Picture this. You're sitting in a loud dive bar in Manhattan, nursing an old-fashioned, and the TV is blasting politicians screaming at each other about the minimum wage. The right, in their crisp Armani suits, is fear-mongering that if you pay burger flippers a living wage, the economy will tank faster than Lehman Brothers in 2008. They paint a picture of small businesses shuttering and a Big Mac costing as much as a steak at Peter Luger's. Sound familiar? That's the supply and demand gospel that every college freshman gets brainwashed with. But hold on to your wallet, because I'm about to let you in on a secret the ivory tower hates to admit. For decades, they were dead wrong, and the 2021 Nobel Prize in Economics, awarded to David Card, Joshua Angrist, and Guido Imbens, was a direct slap in the face to that arrogance. This isn't a story about dry math formulas scrawled on dusty chalkboards. This is about the real world, where sweat, grease, and life-or-death decisions happen daily. Before 2021, economics was more like a religion than a science. Professors sat in their towers drawing pretty curves and declaring, if A happens, B must follow. If you raise the price of labor, A, businesses fire people, B. That logic sounds solid, like Thanos snapping his fingers to wipe out half the universe. But real life isn't a Marvel movie, and the labor market is way more complex than a 2D chart. David Card, the man who dared to challenge the dogma, didn't use empty theory. He acted like a detective. He went to the crime scene. In the early 90s, New Jersey decided to hike the minimum wage from $4.25 to $5.05. According to mainstream economic theory at the time, the stuff worshipped like the Bible at the University of Chicago, New Jersey should have become a graveyard for the fast food industry. Wendy's, Burger King, and KFC should have been slashing jobs like crazy to cover costs.
But Card and his late colleague Alan Kruger did something crazy. They didn't guess. They compared fast food joints in New Jersey with those in neighboring Pennsylvania, where the minimum wage stayed flat. Picture two states right next to each other, same culture, same weather, same customer base craving greasy fries. Pennsylvania was the perfect control group, just like in a medical vaccine trial. The result? A shockwave that rattled academia. In New Jersey, where wages went up, employment didn't drop. In fact, it went up slightly. No collapse, no fast food apocalypse. Real-world data punched abstract theory right in the nose. It proved the labor market doesn't work like a vending machine. Humans aren't robots that react in only one direction. When pay goes up, staff stay longer, productivity spikes, and turnover drops, saving businesses a fortune in hiring costs. But the 2021 Nobel wasn't just about burgers. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Joshua Angrist and Guido Imbens weren't honored because they love fast food. They were honored because they gave us the toolkit to pull off these magic tricks. They transformed economics from a guessing game based on correlation into a hard science of causation.
Remember the old saying, the rooster crows and the sun rises. An idiot thinks the crowing makes the sun rise. That is the fatal confusion between correlation and causation that we see in the news every day. People who drink red wine live longer, or is it just that rich people drink wine and can afford better doctors? Going to an Ivy League makes you rich, or were the kids who got into Harvard already smart and wealthy to begin with? Angrist and Imbens taught us how to use natural experiments to filter out that noise. They didn't need a lab with test tubes and white coats. They turned the whole world into a lab. They looked at historical accidents, sudden policy changes, or even lotteries to separate the real cause from dumb luck. Awarding the Nobel to this trio was a loud statement. The era of theorists sitting in air-conditioned rooms judging the world is over. We are living in the age of real-world data. If you want to know why Apple is richer than a nation-state, or why printing money doesn't always cause immediate inflation, you can't rely on old textbooks. You need the mindset of Card, Angrist, and Imbens. But wait, if this method is so magical, why are we still getting played by fake news and corporate hollow promises? Why do we still believe the experts on CNBC or Bloomberg when their forecasts are dead wrong? The secret lies in the engine of this method, which I'm about to strip down for you. It doesn't just apply to macro policy, it explains exactly why that used car you bought on Craigslist is a lemon, or why your college degree might, or might not, be worth a fortune. Brace yourself, because we're about to look under the hood of this truth-seeking machine, and it's grittier than you think.
We just smashed the illusion that economic theory is always right. Now let's roll up our sleeves and crawl under the chassis to see what the hell is actually going on inside this Nobel-winning machine. Forget the thick textbooks. To understand Joshua Angrist and Guido Imbens, you need to think like a pro poker player or a hacker looking for a glitch in the matrix. The engine here is called natural experiments. In medicine, if you want to know if the Pfizer vaccine works, what do? You You split people into two random groups. One gets the shot, the other gets saline, placebo. Easy as pie. But in economics, you can't do that. You can't kidnap 1,000 kids, force half to drop out in 10th grade, and force the other half to get PhDs just to see who gets richer. That's unethical and illegal. So what did economists do? In the past, they just compared people who chose to go to school versus those who chose to drop out. This data is total garbage. Why? Because the people getting PhDs might already be smarter, harder working, or richer. You're comparing apples to oranges. It's a rookie mistake, confusing self-selection bias with actual impact. This is where Angrist and Imbens' engine shines. They go looking for system glitches that God, the government, or sheer luck accidentally created. Situations where humans were sorted into groups randomly without them even knowing.
Let's take Joshua Angrist's classic example, the Vietnam Draft Lottery. Flashback to the chaotic 70s in America. Uncle Sam needed troops for Vietnam, and they held a televised lottery. They drew birthdays. If the ball with your birthday on it was picked first, congratulations, or sorry, you got a one-way ticket to boot camp. If your birthday was at the bottom of the list, you stayed home. This was a tragic event, but to the cold eye of a data scientist, it was a gold mine. Why? Because birthdays are random. You don't pick your birthday. The guys born on April 15th, drafted, and the guys born on April 16th, safe, were basically identical in intelligence, health, and family background. The only difference was the luck of the draw. Angrist compared the income of these two groups years after the war ended. The result? The veterans who were forced to go earned significantly less than those who stayed home, about 15% less. But the reason wasn't just PTSD or physical injury. The real reason was much more brutal: lost opportunity. While the drafted group was humping gear in the jungle, the stay-at-home group was accumulating years of civilian work experience. When the vets came back, they were behind in the rat race and never caught up. This is causation, not people who like the army are usually poor, but going to the army caused you to be poorer. Totally different animal. And Guido Imbens, the other piece of the puzzle, built the mathematical framework to make sure this comparison was legit. He introduced the concept of LATE, local average treatment effect. Don't let the name scare you. It simply means we only measure the impact on the people who are actually affected by that random change.
Think about education. Angrist and Kruger, him again, used another glitch: laws on school entry age and dropout age. In the US, you start school the year you turn 6, and you can legally drop out when you turn 16. This creates a weird loophole. Kids born early in the year, Jan-Feb, are older for their grade. They hit age 16 sooner and can legally drop out sooner than kids born late in the year. The data showed kids born late in the year were forced to sit their butts in class a little longer to reach dropout age. And guess what? Just those few months of extra forced schooling actually raised their lifetime earnings. Conclusion: education actually increases income. It's not just a piece of paper to show off. How important is this engine? It's the polygraph test of the 21st century. When Uber says their drivers are happy because of flexible algorithms, or when a government says unemployment benefits make people lazy, we don't need to listen to their pitch. We need to find a natural experiment. We need clean data. But, and this is a massive but, having a Ferrari doesn't mean you know how to drive it. The world is full of leaders and giant corporations who intentionally ignore these signals, or worse, use bad data to justify disastrous decisions. When this engine is ignored or manipulated, the consequences aren't just spare change. We're talking economic collapse, supply chain crises, and strategic blunders that bring the world to its knees. You want to know what happens when superpowers like the US, China, or the EU run their countries on gut feeling instead of causation? Hold on to your seat, because in the next part, I will show you the brutal picture the 6 o'clock news never dares to explain.
We are living in a world run by addicts, addicted to old models, believing the past will always repeat exactly as the future. And when they're wrong, they don't pay the price. Your savings account does. Look at David Card, Joshua Angrist, and Guido Imbens. They taught us don't trust intuition. Look at the data from natural experiments. But let's look at what the world's superpowers did. They did the exact opposite. They created massive global glitches because of a fatal confusion between correlation and causation. Con number 1, the Fed and the transitory inflation delusion. In 2021, when prices started climbing, Jerome Powell and his crew at the Federal Reserve stayed cool as cucumbers. They kept chanting on TV that inflation was just transitory. Why were they so confidently wrong? Because they were driving while looking in the rearview mirror. They were looking at 2008 data. Back then, the Fed printed money, QE, to save the banks, and inflation didn't happen. A false correlation formed in their heads. Printing money equals no big deal. But they ignored the most important causal variable that Angrist's method would have flagged immediately: the supply chain. In 2008, factories were running, ships were moving. In 2020-2021, the world was frozen. When you pump trillions of dollars into people's pockets while goods are scarce, prices must go up. That is causation. That was a global-scale natural experiment that the Fed failed to read. The result? The worst inflation slide in 40 years, turning the middle class's savings into confetti faster than Thanos could snap.
The con number 2, China and the Evergrande time bomb. Let's flip to the other side of the globe. For 2 decades, China built an economy on concrete and steel. Beijing's logic was simple: build housing equals GDP growth. The chart always goes up. But this was another causal fallacy. They believed urbanization caused endless real estate growth. They ignored the natural experiment happening right inside their own borders, the one-child policy. When the Evergrande Group started collapsing under $300 billion in debt, it wasn't a random accident. It was the inevitable result of ignoring demographic data. You can't sell houses when there are no young people left to buy them. The 3 red lines policy to tighten debt was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Beijing tried to use administrative orders to bend the laws of supply and demand, like King Canute commanding the tide to stop. The result is ghost cities popping up everywhere and millions of Chinese citizens seeing their life savings buried in unfinished buildings. The con number 3, Germany and the energy gamble. And don't forget Europe. Let's talk about Germany under Angela Merkel. Germany, the engineering engine of Europe, made a strategic error so dumb even a freshman econ student would shake their head. They shut down safe nuclear plants in exchange for cheap gas from Russia via the Nord Stream pipeline. Their theory? Trade creates peace. They believed the correlation: if we buy Putin's gas, he won't start a war because he doesn't want to lose revenue. That was deadly naivete. They confused economic dependence with security guarantees. The Ukraine war was the brutal, real-world experiment that smashed that hypothesis. When the gas valve was turned off, German industry went into panic mode, energy prices skyrocketed, and Europeans faced a freezing winter. They bet their entire economy on a variable they couldn't control, ignoring the basic principle of risk management Guido Imbens always talks about: never extrapolate past data, Cold War peace, to a completely new context.
The world doesn't run on the smooth lines of an expert's Excel sheet. It runs on shocks, ruptures, and tangled webs of causation that will crush you if you don't have critical thinking. Governments and giant corporations mess up constantly because of arrogance. They believe they can control the matrix, but David Card, Joshua Angrist, and Guido Imbens gave us, the little guys, a weapon. We don't have to be victims of these macro mistakes. We can learn to see through the lies in the cooked data. So the most important question right now is, what do you, a tiny individual in this global storm, do to protect yourself? How do you apply this Nobel mindset to managing your wallet, your career, and your future, instead of sitting around waiting for a bailout that's never coming? Don't take your eyes off the screen, because I'm about to hand you the key to escaping the matrix.
All right, we've been through 90s New Jersey, the Vietnam battlefields, and the collapse of Chinese real estate giants. But the final question, the one keeping you up at night, remains: how does this Nobel theory help me pay rent, buy a car, and not die broke? If you're still waiting for a get-rich-quick formula like buy Bitcoin and pray, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong place. The lesson from Card, Angrist, and Imbens is much more ruthless. Stop living on gut feelings and start thinking like a data scientist. Here are 3 Nobelized survival rules for your life. 1. Don't be the turkey before Thanksgiving, the correlation trap in investing. Nassim Taleb told a story of the turkey. Every day, the farmer comes and feeds it. To the turkey, farmer correlates positively with food. Data from 1,000 consecutive days confirms this. The turkey believes the farmer loves him, but on day 1001, Thanksgiving, that correlation collapses. The farmer isn't there to feed him, he's there to chop his head off. Most of you invest like that turkey. You see the stock market rise for 10 years, you think it goes up forever. You see friends buying NFT monkeys and getting rich, you think that's the formula. You are looking at correlation, not causation. Before dropping money on anything, stocks, crypto, real estate, ask Angrist's question: what is the actual mechanism here? Is the stock up because the company is selling more product, sustainable causation, or just because the Fed is pumping cheap money, temporary correlation? If it's cheap money, when the Fed turns off the tap, like in 2022, you're going to be the turkey on the dinner table. Don't invest in charts, invest in the engine that makes money.
2. A/B test your life. Personal natural experiments. We usually fear change because we fear risk. What if I quit my job and fail? David Card taught us, don't guess, look at the comparative data, counterfactual. but you can't live two lives at once to compare. So what do? Create micro-natural experiments. Don't quit your job immediately to start a business. High risk. Keep your current job, control group, and spend 2 hours every night running the new project, experimental group. Compare the income and happiness levels of daytime you and nighttime you after 3 months. If the side hustle makes 50% of your main salary, that is a causal data showing that you can make the jump. Don't listen to the cliche, follow your passion. Passion is emotion, data is truth. Let the market answer if your passion is worth money through small tests. 3. The college degree, signal or skill, the late effect. Back to Angrist's education research. He proves schooling does increase income, but be careful. In the real world, a degree operates on a signaling mechanism. It tells employers, hey, I have the patience to sit through 4 years of lectures, so I have the patience to do your boring office job. But the world is changing. Big tech giants, Google, Tesla, are slowly dropping degree requirements. If you plan to go $50,000 in debt for a mediocre MBA just because statistics say people with MBAs earn more, stop. That's a trap. The people earning more were usually already smart and well-connected before they got the MBA, selection bias. Invest in hard skills that are measurable: code, data analysis, sales, engineering. Skills create a direct causal link to income. A degree is just a parking validation ticket. Skills are the car that drives you places.
The 2021 Nobel wasn't just a victory for 3 old professors. It was a wake-up call for the chaotic information age. We are drowning in data but starving for truth. Every time you read a clickbait headline, hear a politician's promise, or see a can't-lose investment opportunity, remember David Card, Joshua Angrist, and Guido Imbens. Put on your scientific skepticism glasses. Look for the control group. Look for causation. Because in a world where everyone is trying to scam you with pretty numbers, the ability to see the naked truth is the ultimate money-making superpower. Don't just be a data point on someone else's chart, be the one holding the pen.